Good. I was about to say good evening, because it is evening for me, but it's not always for everyone who watches me. Whatever time of the day it is for you. Welcome. This is Bryony Rose Smith live from the Bidden Library. And today, we are reading more A Leap into Darkness, which was quite dark last time. Horrible imagery. That poor queen did suffer. But before we get into it, hi Luke! I am good. I hit 300! Yee! How are you? Is that 2D model of yours ready yet? Let's do a quick recap of the book. So, good. Glad you're good. Jake is a dog. Good evening, Zira's pretty sure too. Good evening. Jake is a doggo. Jake is a doggo that used to do street performances with his peasant family, Rose and Chris. Unfortunately, Rose died, and Chris went a little bit sad and drunk and bad, and started being quite mean to Jake. But as he was being mean to Jake, the king went past, and the king was like, "You should not be mean to this wonderful dog. I am going to adopt a dog." Yes, Jake the dog, but not like that. Jake the fluffy little white dog, not yellow and wiggly. That's probably the best description I can find of Adventure Time Jake. Wiggly. So he gets adopted by the royal family, and there's 2 kids called, oh god, I'm so bad with names, Janice and the boy. And Stretchy. Stretchy is also a good description of Adventure Time Jake the dog. This Jake the dog is just generally very athletic. They have some dogs as well. He starts fitting in, and on the way to... But there is some trouble brewing between the king and the queen. They're not getting along. No way. It seems that they maybe lost their eldest daughter, Lucy. It seems to be the way. So they go to a show that evening, and they pass a street performing wizard who does many amazing feats and impresses the crowd, but something's very strange about him. Jake feels there's something very strange, and the queen is onto it too, and the queen's like, "You are a charlatan, get out of my town!" But he seems to put a spell on her before he leaves. And then everything's kind of okay, but the queen's health starts to deteriorate since then. She starts getting terribly ill. And, just as she's on her deathbed, who turns up but the wizard? He says, "Oh, I'll help you. I'll help you get her back." But, she says, no, I don't want that man near me. I don't want to. And luckily, they get there too late. And this is one of the few books where I'm like, I'm actually kind of happy they didn't save her. Because she did not want to be saved. She did not want to have this evil magic on her. She'd rather just pass away. And she did. She passed away. And the wizard did not get there in time to do whatever he wanted to do to her. And I'm good with that. I'm sad that she died. That these kids have lost a mum. But at least the wizard didn't get to do what he wanted to do. I think that's about where we left off. There's a couple of different details, but I can fill you in as we go. Right, quick drink. Wet the old throat, and then we'll get on with it. It is, in fact, sad age. On the town. Oh yeah! Last chapter, he saw the cat Maisie, who is in a street gang. For some reason, she was hanging around the castle. Jake saw her at night. So that's who Maisie is. Maisie moves surprisingly fast for a cat, hardly slowing her brisk pace even as they travelled through woods. She and Jake had been at it for a while now, staying undercover just off the main road leading from the castle to the town, and he struggled to keep her in view. His lack of sleep didn't help matters either. Anytime he paused to scrape at his crusty eyes, the crusts in his eyes, crusties in his eyes, He lost sight of the cat as she disappeared behind trees or thickets. It was a mystery to him, too, as to why they had to carry on in secrecy. But even if he asked her, he reasoned it wouldn't matter anyhow. She wouldn't understand him. Yeah, Maisie didn't speak animal. She was feral by the sounds of it. That's what they said she was. As they came up to the ledge of town, Maisie looked back at Jake and then stealthily worked her way along a narrow alley, taking care to stay in the shadows as the sun continued its early morning climb into the sky. Jake stayed back a bit, tracking her path as he twitched his ears! I forgot my ears! 1 second. I'm just gonna go disappear a minute and go find them. 1 minute. 1 minute. Where did I put them? Na 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 na. Ba 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 ba. I meant to do that. Wrong button. You saw nothing. Where's my ears? We can't read the dog book without my doggy ears. It's cute. Puppy ears. Do 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 do. Make sure they're in securely. Okay, I got them, we're fine. Woof, we're back. Sorry about that. I knew I was forgetting something. You did not see that menu in the corner at all. Anyway. I knew it. I was forgetting something. Ears! As he caught up with the cat at the end of the alley, he heard angry voices. The two of them peered out into the square. The first thing they saw were two burly men screaming at each other as they stood by an overturned cart. A horse lay snorting on its side near a pile of fish that had spilled from the cart onto the ground. Two skinny hounds fought over a single trout, pulling on it from opposite ends. "You bloody cutters! Spooked my horse! I'll have your hide for sure!" I also forgot one more thing. My stream deck isn't set up properly either. There we go. I can be angry now. Said the fishmonger to the other man. "Look here, those aren't my dogs. You've got quite the nerve to accuse me of..." But the fishmonger had lost interest in the conversation and lunged at him. They rolled over and over in the ground, while the two dogs ripped the fish apart and ran away from the brawl. Jake heard other noisy voices now. "Hello, my heady. Welcome." Jake heard other noisy voices now, coming from the left side of the square. He looked over to see what was causing the commotion. The barkeep was settled on the ground, held in stocks. People milled about him, laughing and jeering at him. One particularly irate citizen, with scarecrow hair and a bushy, frowning unibrow, appeared to be in charge of administering justice. He slowly circled around the barkeep, tapping a large wooden club against his leg. A set of long keys jangled from his belt. Ooh! Yeah, I had noticed you haven't been around for a wee bit. Just so you're aware, I've been changing people's appearances on... Ruiner! Yes, Ruiner. Brain. If you have any particular combat lines you want for your character in Ruiner, go into my community tab, and there's like a post on there that people have been giving me their combat lines for it, so I can put them in the game. Yeah, just so you're aware. He slowly circled around the barkeep. Yep, we read that part. He turned back to the barkeep and, in a loud voice, addressed the crowd gathering before him. "You with us, or you're against us? The tide has turned for Ghostland. Time to swear a new allegiance while you still can. Pick your sides carefully." With raised fists, the townspeople shouted in agreement. The man's voice faded off as he watched one of the king's guardsmen ride up. "Have you lost your mind?" the guard demanded, glowering down at him. "Upon whose authority do you act to hold? No king, no queen, no regent. We act upon our own authority now," said the man, leaning the club on his shoulder, "to protect ourselves from those that bring harm upon this town." The guard was furious. "I know that man personally," he growled, motioning to the barkeep. "You'll release him immediately, or—" But he didn't get a chance to finish his threat. At that point, a shadow rippled over the confrontation. Jake looked up, just in time to see a raven gliding by. Was that the same bird he had seen before with bells adorned? But there was no time to think about that. The guard's horse squealed and threw its rider to the ground, knocking the wind out of him. The man with the club seized on the advantage and pounced on the guard, bludgeoning him. So, what's it mean completely? Can you please explain how it works? So, you know in Ruiner when there's little bits of dialogue at the bottom and the characters just say different things when they're attacked and when they kill someone and stuff like that? That's the battle dialogue I want. If you don't have anything particular in mind, I can make it up for you, no worries. So what does your little character say when you attack someone, when the battle starts, when you kill someone, when a friend dies, that kind of thing? You can have a look at the other people's comments. They should be able to give you a fairly good guide. It is good. It's such a good game, and there is such a dedicated fan base that has found me. It's great. Yeah, if you like to watch me screaming, Minecraft's definitely the stream to watch. There's so much spoopy in that game. Jake was enraged. He burst forward and sprang at the man, slamming into his chest and knocking him to the ground. As the man struggled to his feet, Jake ran figure eights around his legs. The man twisted in different directions, trying to catch the little dog, only to knock up his own legs and crash to the ground again. Jake saw his chance and dove in, yanking the keys off his belt. I mean, Luke, you are half the reason those Minecraft streams exist. You and Mehdi, you're both here. They're both the reasons I get stressed now once a week. Jake saw his chance and dove in, yanking the keys off his belt. As Jake ran towards the barkeep, he saw Maisie jumping up and clawing at the head of another deranged citizen and Henry? Ah yes, Henry is one of the royal dogs that followed him along because Henry's a sweetie. To his astonishment, yes, Henry was biting someone's ankle. You go, Henry! Jake used his teeth to latch onto the largest key and turned it in the stock's padlock. Very impressive for such a small doggo. The guard had recovered enough now and had come over to help the barkeep to his feet. He whistled for his horse, and the two men mounted up just as the mob closed in on them. Jake started hopping and barking. You get stressed with reading. You have nothing but... Yes, I know you do. And I do have fun in the end, as much as I say stressed. A good game should stress you out a little bit, really. That's called challenge more than anything. Not really... Nah, not really stress, I guess. Though I love people telling me how to play the game as well. Because I just don't know enough about Minecraft. And everyone's like, oh, by the way, you can do this. I'm like, oh, yes, you can! Geniuses, it's great. Ruiners like that as well. Everyone just wants to help me out. They're so nice. Everyone's nice. Jake started hopping and barking at the angry citizens as the angry citizens turned their attention towards the bitchin. As the two men rode away, the barkeep looked back amazed at the surreal scene unfolding behind him. Jake darted to and fro, narrowly avoiding grabbing hands and stomping feet. As he dodged, he spotted Henry and Maisie. "I've got this! Take Maisie and meet me at the King's Crossing Bridge! Run! Now!" he shouted at Henry. As the little poodle and the mangy cat threaded their way under the legs and out of the square, Jake skittered up onto a cart, vaulted up from all fours onto a terraced house awning, bounced from there to the house's gutter. I know, a lot of people don't like backseating. But honestly, I kind of don't mind it. Yeah. I can tell people to stop, and they're pretty good when I do tell people to stop telling me things. But people just want to be helpful most of the time. I don't mind it too much. I'm a bit of a scatterbrain most of the time, so it kind of helps me stay on track. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Jake skittered up onto a cart, vaulted up from all fours onto a terrace house awning, bounced from there to the house's gutter, and then shimmied up onto the roof. He slid along tiles and then jumped up onto the next roof. As he bounded from rooftop to rooftop, the crowd followed him below, shouting and shaking fists up at him. He soon ran out of rooftops, though, as he stood next to a brick chimney and was deciding his next move. His toes started skidding down the tiles, and of course his whole body quickly followed. He searched frantically and then found what he needed: the house's gutter. He launched towards it just as he was heading over the edge of the roof and hung onto it with his claws. He caught a quick, relieved breath and then slid down the gutter, bounced off an awning and landed on a cart, and then bound down into an alley. Damn, that parkour skills! Assassin skills these are. Assassino Jakey. But it was no good. There were screaming townsfolk clogging the alley from both directions now, and they were coming right at him. Jake looked around desperately. No carts, no gutters, no awnings within reach now. As he turned in tight circles, suddenly Vincent, Nigel, and Winston were standing in the alleyway. Yay! Through there! Vincent said to Jake, pointing a paw at the narrow, dark doorway he and his two companions just came through. Door is open on the other end, too. Go! Vincent said, as Jake started to thank him. The gang of three, snarling, faced off against the citizens. Jake nodded gratefully back at Vincent, then slipped through the doorway. When Jake reached the wide bridge at the edge of town, Henry was waiting for him. The little poodle hopped up on his hind legs and gave Jake a hug. Aww, Henry's such a sweetie. Knocking him over and licking his ear as Jake laughed. What now? Asked Henry. Jake squinted, then tried to point at Maisie, who was already a black speck bounding away from them over the bridge. There's your answer, he said. They started after the cat. As a guard approached, Belzadorn sat up alert on a straw mattress on the floor of his cell. The sorceress stood up, smiling, as the guard unlocked the door. Out you come, out you go, come on, move it. Here's your sack, said the guard. And don't smile at me. I don't like you smiling at me. Yeah, I don't blame you. Belzadorn chuckled. Whatever pleases you. But remember, with good cheer, one has no fear. The guard frowned. Just don't speak. Now pick up your step, time's short. Indeed it is, said the sorceress smugly as they walked down the torchlit hallway. Damn, Jake had to deal with a whole zombie issue there. Angry villager zombies. Oh no. Belzadorn's already got his claws in deep. What more will happen? Next chapter. Back at an old haunt. The animals were heading away from town, further from the castle, further from home. Maisie was leading them, but not on any path that Jake had ever taken. Just when they seemed to be wandering about hopelessly lost in a loop, she would suddenly veer off in a new direction. She deftly sidestepped thorny bush and brambles now and worked her way out into pleasant shaded grove. Jake stopped, trying to get his bearings. Henry, completely winded, stumbled up beside him. Where are we going? Okay, have fun, Henry asked as they emerged from the grove. And then Jake saw it. The cottage. His old home. He sucked in air and felt the goose flesh rise along his back. Stay far back in the woods, he whispered to Henry. It's not safe here. Hey, you're sleepy, whatever. Then maybe you should have a nap if you're sleepy. And Mehedy's getting the food on out. He's ready for sleepy too. Get the sleepy. Sleepy party. Jake turned to locate Maisie, only to see her slipping away into the forest again. His instinct was telling him to bolt. To leave now. Strangely enough, though, he stood rigid and slowly turned to look at the cottage again. It was battered, sagging. The rotting door was cracked open, but no sign of Chris. He was suddenly overwhelmed with emotion as his watery eyes settled on Rosie's favourite spot, the garden. Oh, you can get comfy once the futon is out. Now overgrown with weeds, his tail sagged as he stifled a sob. As Jake looked away from the garden and took notice of the cairn and the dead bluebells scattered about, Chris stumbled out through the door, bottle in hand. He reached out into the air with one shaking hand, as if he were trying to keep his balance and touch Jake from afar at the same time. Jake? Is that you? But why are you here? He said, running filthy thick fingers through his tangled beard. His clouded eyes seemed to search the space around him for some coherent thought. Must be Rosie's doing. Wanted this for some reason. Said you could understand. He faltered and sighed. Losing my mind's more like it. he muttered, shaking his head as he advanced towards Jake. Jake's hair stood on end. He growled as he backpedaled from Chris. From this man who had disappointed everyone. And there it was, finally. That lucid thought. That recognition of his master's failure and fault that had been buried deep inside Jake for some time now. But that hadn't been allowed to work its way up to the surface, to his consciousness. He had held on dutifully to what Chris had said, that Jake should carry the burden, the guilt. Hey, thank you, Mahoney! We got there eventually! And tomorrow I'll be scaring myself a lot, in celebration. Look forward to it. Until now, until he saw him before, until he saw him today, how pathetic his owner was. He stopped growling. If you're really there, then hear me, Chris said in a tired voice. You seen it? Town's sick. It's lost its way. It's Belzadorn, and that winged devil's doing. Jake looked at him intently. Belzadorn's got bitter revenge in his heart for his son. Yes, don't miss tomorrow. Tomorrow's gonna be special, he continued. It's why he means to arm the king and James like he did the queen. Jake tilted his head. His eyes went wide as he listened. Chris stepped closer to him, energy building within his limbs and his voice rising. He murdered her! Dunno how, but I'm certain of it just the same. You gotta act quick. You gotta find some way to warn the royal family. Have I ever read a manga called God's Lie? No, I have not. What is it about? Other than God's Lie, which happens a lot in a lot of mythologies, because they are bitches most of the time. He staggered and stumbled and toppled onto Jake. Jake yelped and wiggled out from under him and fled into the woods. Chris struggled to his feet and reached out to his dog, who had already disappeared. Jake! Wait, I didn't mean... Oh! That hurt. I kind of feel bad for Chris a little bit. He's dealt with all his feelings the complete wrong way and tried to find his answers at the bottom of a bottle, but, you know, who doesn't do that when loved ones die? Everyone tries to find the bottom of a bottle for a little bit. Or some kind of equivalent comfort just to drown themselves in. At least he's coming to now. Hopefully that means he'll take the right steps at some point. As Jake padded down a castle hallway, he replayed in his mind his trip to town and Chris's warning. He saw again scattered images of citizens of Gorsland acting completely deranged. And though what Chris had said about the Queen was shocking, it started to make sense. It added pieces to the puzzle that Jake had been working through on his own. Belzadorn was not a friend. It's about two middle school little peeps who fall in love during summer, little summer love, and they discover that it's just that summer love. That's what the back of the manga said. I've yet to read it. Fair enough. That sounds very, very cute, also very bittersweet. Interesting stuff. And only Jake and Chris seem to realise what. It's a one-off manga though. Oh, that's always good. Obviously, most mangas come in series, and it can be a pain in the ass, because you're like, I want to read this, but there's 1,000 volumes! Yay! There goes all my money. We love a good one-off. Well, maybe Maisie knew it too. said a small voice in his head. But worse than nobody realizing that Belzador might be a threat, it seemed as though others all around the sorcerer were being drawn to him. Jake shook his head. How could he explain this too? His thoughts were cut off when he saw Janice running towards him, beaming, her eyes shining with tears. She knelt down before him and stroked his head. Jakey! I was so worried about you! When you and Henry missed dinner, and then Henry came back home and you didn't, I thought I'd lost you. Oh, look, Clint. Yeah, that's wise. That's wise. One Piece is, it'll definitely break the bank to get caught up on One Piece. Unless, and I don't mean this as a advert for the record, but if you are someone who likes manga, then some of the apps subscriptions are fairly cheap. If you ever wanted to binge read a lot of famous mangas, the app subscriptions are like really cheap. And you get pretty much unlimited access to the content. It's wonderful. Jake nuzzled against her hand. I'm okay, but I have urgent news. We went through town today. Henry's not to blame for that, and it was truly madness there. Janice's face clouded. She stopped petting Jake. You went to town? Without telling me first? Jake cowered and lowered his head. I'm sorry, I should have asked. I won't have you taking Henry on perilous journeys, she said sternly. Do I need to separate the two of you? Okay, Luke, no worries. Just happy for you to be here, whether you chat or not. We are happy, happy, happy. You do what you need. No, of course not, Jake said with a little gasp. He slowly lifted his head. But I received a warning about danger here in the castle. Warning? Danger? I don't understand, said Janice, her eyes flashing with anger. Jake timidly lifted a paw. Belzador may have already harmed your father. And James. Janice stood up and put her hands on her hips. How is that even possible? She asked, scowling down at him. Belzador's been locked up in his cell since Mother... Or have you forgotten that? Jake was taken aback. He shifted uncomfortably and averted his eyes from her glare. And who's your source for this nonsense? She asked in a clipped voice. He gulped. My old master. He spoke with conviction and... This is your home! My father has told me about your abusive owner. How is it that you trust him instead of me? Someone who actually loves you. Janice, sweetie, this is not what this is about. She demanded. It's not like that, Jake faltered. I only wanted to... You'd be wise to remember your good fortune here, she said, her face contorted with rage. Jake almost didn't recognize her. She paused and drew in a breath. And anyhow, your master's confused, she said, and now in a composed manner. James has taken ill, but it hasn't played out like your drunkard keeper would expect. Jake was shocked. What's wrong with James? He has what took Mother, Janice replied in a matter-of-fact tone. That's plain enough. But I won't let it happen to him. I shook Father from his idle sleep to get help for James immediately. Janice, sweetie. I know you're a child, but... Sweetie! Jake nodded. So the doctors are here? Certainly not the doctors, Janice retorted as she turned away from him and walked briskly down the children's chamber, towards the children's chamber. I insisted on the one who could have saved Mother, if only he'd been brought to her in time. Sweetie! Jake hurried to catch up with her. As they stepped into the chamber, the little dog was stunned by the sight. Oh, no. Sweetie. Sweetie Bo Beatty. The sorcerer in the chamber. As Jake's eyes adjusted to the dimness of the room, he saw that James was laid across the bed, his eyes closed, his breathing labored. Thin, wiry black tendrils were etched throughout on his pale limbs, just like his mother. Jake thought. The king was there too, but only as a shadow of the man he had been. He slouched in his chair by the bed, attendants stepping on to prop him up as he would begin to slowly slide down. Oh god, he's a zombie at this point. His face was haggard. Poor Janice, no wonder she's like completely freaking out. Her dad's useless. Her brother's dying. Her mum just died. Oh, this poor baby. This poor baby. His face was haggard and gaunt, his eyes mere slits, and his royal rumpled garb only partly concealed the pale flesh that hung loosely from his limbs. The two poodles were also in the room. Henry was a frightened ball curled up near the mirror, while Pendleton stood stoically close to the bed. A robed figure, his back to the others, was hunched over James, mumbling. His garbled mutterings were but whispers, but they seemed to float and swirl and reflect off the furthest corners and crannies of the room. He sensed the presence of Janice and Jake now, and slowly turned to face them. Belzadorn smiled. "The beloved pet is home," he said, glancing down at the bitchin. "What good fortune!" Jake, trembling, felt the icy fingers of dread work their way across his back and down his limbs as Janice moved away from his side and closer to the sorcerer. Belzadon smiled warmly at Janice. "I'm sure his time away from you has given him renewed appreciation for his safety here." He turned then to the king and touched his cheek. "But this good fortune carries well beyond the safe return of a simple animal." The king sat up, his eyes opened and focused on James. "For you see that your father has regained some interest in living." Janice's eyes sparkled as she stepped closer, drawn to him. The ghastly thought knifed through Jake's head. The king, held up by his servants, leaned forwards. "My son, James, will he live?" he asked the sorcerer, his voice rasping. Belzadorn rested his eyes on the boy and stroked his forehead. He turned his gaze back upon the king. "What would you have me do?" he asked. The king grasped the sorcerer's arm with a bony hand. "Heal my son," he said, his voice cracking. Belzadorn gave a small smile and patted the king's hand. "Your son will live. Your faith in me has saved him." Well, he's in. Fucking dick. If at first you don't succeed, poison the child, I guess. When in doubt, curse the children. Yay. Oh, this book is more stressful than I thought it would be. A surprise in the courtyard. Janice and the three dogs were again standing in the middle of the castle courtyard. She tapped a thin baton against her legs as she inspected her surroundings. She strode towards a wooden platform, twirled the baton over her head, and then turned on her heel. "Up, Henry!" she commanded, pointing the baton at him. One Piece mangas are like enough to fill the library you're stuck in. Miss Brownie, I wanted to answer, but I was busy with the food done. No worries. Yes, they probably are. If I decided to start reading One Piece manga, I'd probably be out of here real fast. The little poodle clambered up the 4 steps to the top of the platform and sat down. She moved quickly to another platform. "Now you, Pendleton!" Pendleton opened his mouth to speak. "Not a word from you," said Janice sternly. "Up!" The large poodle sulked as he gracefully ascended to the top of the platform, carefully sitting down. Janice walked over to the 3rd platform, centered between the other 2. She looked sharply over at Jake as she picked up a wooden hoop. She flourished her baton, then leveled it at him. "Remember your part, Jake! Roll over!" Jake dropped his head. He hadn't spent any meaningful time with Janice since they had been in the children's chamber with Belzadorn. She had since moved into another bedroom to allow James rest unencumbered and with all necessary privacy. The dogs had been sequestered to a small, unadorned room for their sleeping quarters until further notice. Jake felt loneliness creep into his heart as his bond with her seemed to be slipping away. Janice frowned with impatience. "This is for father! Roll over!" Oh, she's doing the same plan as to try to cheer up her father than her mother. Sweet girl, sweet girl. Jake rolled over towards her. "Again!" she said again, and Jake rolled again. "And up!" she commanded, as she held the hoop level with the top of the platform. Jake crouched and then leapt up through the hoop. He alighted perfectly on the small landing area. He sat down, his sad eyes staring at her. He's not a giant poodle. I think he's just like an older poodle, because poodles can get quite big, if I remember correctly. Because one of them are adorable and the other is step away from being a crime. Just a normal big poodle, I think. As far as I know. Janice allowed a small smile to form. "That's good. Very good. We'll brighten fathers." She suddenly stopped speaking at the sound of sudden clapping. She and the dogs looked towards the courtyard entrance. An attendant was wheeling in the king. The poor man sat in a chair with a heavy blanket draped over his legs. He was beaming as he continued to clap. Belzadorn walked beside him, smiling and carrying James in his arms. "You get away from that child, you!" "Well done, Janice," said the king, wheezing and laughing all at once. "What a fine show." We have a little surprise for you, Janice," said the sorcerer. He set James gently on the ground, gingerly standing him up and releasing him. "Go on then, James." The boy's skin was snow white, unblemished. There was no sign of the invasive black network that had stretched across his body just days ago. He looked back at Belzadorn, who gave him an encouraging nod. Janice held her breath. James took a step. Another. And suddenly stumbled. Janice grasped to try break his fall. As he lay still on the ground, she swooped down to him. "James! Are you hurt? Can you move?" James giggled and popped up onto his feet. "Ha ha! Fooled you, didn't I?" He ran forward and hugged her. "Oh, what a little bitch." Absolute little shit. "Little devil," she said with tears in her eyes. "I should beat you, but I'm glad to see you feeling better. James pulled back from her, smiling. We have Belzadon to thank for that. And you, or so I'm told, but don't let it get to your head. Siblings, bro. These are some of the best written young siblings I've ever seen. Belzadon came up behind James and placed a hand on his shoulders. The king was wheeled up next to them. Janice took up his hand. Father, are you? She stated. Dying? Her father finished her sentence, chortling and coughing. That's a piece of information. We missed you, said Janice as she wiped away a tear. Well, I'm here now, he assured her, patting her hand. I have my brief moments of strength, but I tire easily. But seeing you and James does more for my soul than any fool of a doctor. He motioned his attendant. Visit me later today after I've rested a bit, he said to her as his attendant wheeled him away. Janice watched her father leave, and then looked up at the sorcerer. Sir, we need our father. Can you please heal him too? Belzadon smiled down at her warmly. He isn't sick. He grieves, as he should. Be patient. Don't fret. I'm at his side, with his every waking moment. He wiped away a tear from her cheek, nodded, and then walked out of the courtyard. As Janice watched him go, James poked her in the ribs and swiped her baton. Ah, thank you. I will treasure your emoji. If you want animal facts, ask as oh, you're a vet student, Clint? That's very cool. I'm happy to try and answer even more about reptiles. Clint, tell me one thing. How old is a corn snake supposed to live? That is my one question for you. Because, yeah, I will answer why I asked that question when I get an answer. Let me show you what I can do. Henry, Pendleton, Jake, follow me, he said joyfully. You little beast, said Janice, smiling. 6 to 8 years. Oh my god. Really? Wow. Well, my family has a pet corn snake that has lived way too long then, because it just won't die. We've done our best. But not that we're doing our best to kill it, that's not what I mean. Like, we've looked after it and stuff. But it's very old now. I can't even remember when we got the snake, actually. Maybe about 4 years? No. Frick, that thing's probably closer to like 20. Yeah. Pet snake. Called it Snakey. Because we had some art. We're going on a complete tangent from the book here. But when we got the snake, we all kept arguing about what its gender was, and we kept like swapping names every 2 seconds because no one could decide on what the gender was, and we couldn't decide on a name because of it, because we all had gender named ideas that we wanted to give it, so we ended up just calling it Snakey. Just Snake the Snakey. Snakey the Snake. But yeah, that thing's well over 10 at the very least. It has gone on for a long time. So is my cat. So my cat's like 18 years old as well. Things do not. I mean, if it lives in captivity, it can live way longer. Like, dogs normally live up to 10-ish, but in captivity they live up to 20. That makes sense. That makes sense to why this snake is so old. We have old animals in my family. Very old. That's your story for today. As Jake started to walk away towards James, Janice called out to him. "Jake, wait! A word with you," she said firmly. "Oh, Janice, get off his back." He faltered and then returned to her, his eyes averted. She looked down at him, hands on her hips. "I think you'd agree, given this turn of events, that you were completely misled by that awful owner of yours." I'm not sure we are doing a great job, I'm not gonna lie, but fingers crossed, Snakey's having a happy life. Jake hung his head. "Your judgment and recent behaviour," she continued stiffly, "leaves something to be desired. Do better." Jake slowly nodded. I'm so happy for James." Mehdi! That's a new record for you. Normally it's only 2 minutes. Good. Now go to him. Oh, just how is it gonna go wrong? We're just waiting for that shoe to drop kind of thing. All the setup is here. Just waiting for that shoe to drop now, and I don't. We're just about 40% of the way in, so we're probably gonna have it drop in the next 10%, because then it's like halfway through the book. You have like the bad thing happen halfway through the book, and then like the other half of the book fixing it. That's your story structure. Fingers crossed. It is a record. Mehdi is just super formal like that. A surprise for the Privy Council. "This is hopeless," James moaned as he looked down at his sleeping father. "Maybe not," said Janice as she gently shook the king's shoulders. "He said we could visit after he rested a bit." But the king remained fast asleep. Oh no, he's not... Belzy's not going to do that thing where he gets rid of the king and then he puts James on the throne as his puppet king. That's probably what's going to happen here. Because he's already put the town in chaos. So that's what I have learned. No! Humans don't photosynthesize, Clint! No! You're supposed to eat. You're supposed to eat! Eat food! James moaned as not to be a oh, it's been so long since Pendleton's had a line! Not to be a stickler for the details, sniffed Pendleton, but he actually said those very words over 26 hours ago. Oh lordy. Jake hopped up on the bed and licked the king's ear. Henry leapt up and joined on the other one. Pendleton sighed. How very unsanitary. The king did not stir. Just then, Belzadorn came in through the chamber door. James ran over to him. "Please, sir, we can't awaken father. Isn't there something that can be done?" The sorcerer smiled warmly. "No need to worry," he said as he glided over to the king's side. He touched his cheek and waited. The king slowly opened his crusted eyes. At first he didn't seem to recognize where he was, as he looked around anxiously. Belzadorn assisted him as he struggled to sit up in his bed. Gradually the king seemed to become more aware of his surroundings and spoke to the sorcerer in short, strained breaths. "How long have I..." "You slept for more than a day," Belzadorn said cheerfully, "but you gave your body what it needed. Rest. James, Janice, I so much wanted to see you sooner, yet I can not overcome this fatigue. The king's words came in spurts and fits between coughs. He smiled as they leaned in for hugs. He looked again to Belzadorn, worry in his sagging eyes. It's been days since the Queen. I must visit my people, assure them. Your Majesty, your people are in good spirits, and trust in your recovery. Lies! The sorcerer replied bitterly. The king chewed on a long fingernail. I wish I shared the same confidence in their faith and in their allegiance. Belzadorn turned his hologons sitting on the table near the bed. Let me give you peace of mind, he said as he rubbed along the glass. The king squinted as smoky images drifted up and swirled within. He craned his neck, and his mouth dropped open as images took form, now giving a bird's eye view of the town. The children and the dogs too were awestruck by this miraculous magical device. The sorcerer chuckled down at them as he brought the hologons closer to the king. The king gasped as the perspective dropped down rapidly to lower heights. I don't know why photosynthesization is not a word. It sounds like it should be. They could clearly see people bustling along through the streets, smiling and wishing each other well. The king raised frail hands to his ears and gave a delighted little laugh. He could actually hear the citizens greeting each other, which is a frickin' lie! Belzadorn ran his fingers along the hologons. The scene changed to reveal the busy construction of new homes and shops along the main thoroughfare. And the images changed yet again, and they saw a happy family of husband, wife, and little girl waving to one of the king's riders and shouting, "Long live our beloved king! May he get well soon!" Henry spun around 3 times and let out joyful yaps. Jake was in shock. How could this be the same town, he thought, where just recently there had been complete mayhem, and yet there it was, before his very eyes, in better shape than it had ever been. The king's eyes sparkled as he reached out and touched the glass. He let out a deep sigh and leaned back against his pillows. You bring tranquility to a foolish king. I am indebted to your kindness. Don't fret over what you owe me. Just your life! No, the sorcerer responded coolly. Just then, there was a rap on the chamber door. The king frowned as the sorcerer quickly wiped away the images. 4 finely dressed courtiers, all talking at once, floated in and bowed. A harried guard followed behind them. Your Majesty! Begging your forgiveness, but my lords here, they insist. It's the appointed day when you receive our valued consultation, injected the first. The courtier passed, looking over at the children. Janice and James quickly motioned for the dogs to follow them out the door. Jake hesitated and looked back, but Pendleton shoved him along. The king's business, not yours. The guard trailed after them and closed the door behind them. The lords looked back over at the king. Though we are delighted in your continued recovery, it's been weeks for such counsel, continued the second. The people of the kingdom are on edge, questioning the state of affairs, cut in a third, wondering why no regent has been named in your absence. The king scowled with the new-found strength, lifted up a dismissive hand. Silence! I've seen with my own eyes that the town is thriving. But he's a sorcerer king! Why don't you even consider that this might be an illusion? But your Majesty, said the fourth, how can you have seen? Certainly not of late. Belzadorn provides wise counsel, persisted the king. "All that I require. The Privy Council is dissolved. Go and enjoy yourself, as honoured guests of the court." He leaned back, exhausted. The courtiers were flustered. This is highly irregular," began the first. "It's my decision," the king said, exasperated. "If I need you..." "And a departure from protocol," insisted the second. The king's pale face reddened with anger. Belzadon smiled, lifted his palms up towards the men. They immediately fell silent and stepped back. "Peace. The king has stated his intentions. He will receive my counsel, not yours." At those words, the eyes of the first two couriers went glassy, and they nodded mechanically. "We are in complete agreement with the king's wishes," said the first, "and are grateful for his hospitality," agreed the second. "We shall retire now," said the first. "And disrupt the king no more," concluded the second. The two agreeable lords filed out of the chamber, the remaining two astonished as they watched their companions leave. Turned back slowly to face the sorcerer, Belzadon gave them a menacing stare as they shifted uncomfortably. This proclamation," faltered the first, "must be reviewed." "Apparently some. It doesn't look like it's perfect, though, considering he couldn't get all of them. Seems here they needed to roll their wisdom saves, and 2 of them passed." "Would you dare to question?" sputtered the king. Belzadon sighed and gently touched the king's hand. "I don't know. Maybe he just didn't trust that it would work. It obviously didn't work on the queen, which was an issue. Everyone else he seems to pretty much have." Belzadon sighed and gently touched the king's hand. The king immediately relaxed, slumping back against his pillows, his eyes fluttering closed. The sorcerer faced the two lords. "Why do you fear this town that reveres you? Go back now. Travel with the king's guard if you must. Observe, investigate. Report back anything that's cause for alarm. I assure you that you'll have the king's attention. And mine." The two couriers looked at each other. Courtiers looked at each other, hesitated, then nodded in agreement. "We must admit, in practical terms, it's a most thoughtful course of action," said the first, backing out of the chamber. "That we'll take up at once," concurred the second. "We are grateful for your support in this matter," he added, as he bowed and backpedaled through the door. Yeah, fair enough. They've just seen 2 of their friends being completely mind-controlled out of the room. Let's fucking get out of here. As the king fell into a slumber, a thin smile crept across Belzadorn's face. "Oh no, oh no." James and Belzadorn. The next day, the 3 dogs were following behind James as they passed through the king's withdrawing room. As they arrived at his open chamber door, a guard bowed to the boy. James peeked through the door. The king slept, with Belzadorn sitting right by his side. The sorcerer smiled and motioned for James to enter. James looked down at the dogs. "I'm going to sit with father. I know he'll be awake again today. Belzadorn can help with that. I'm certain of it. You don't have to wait for me." He turned away from them and walked into the chamber. Belzadorn rose to greet him and affectionately rubbed his shoulders. As Pendleton turned to go, Jake and Henry remained at the door looking in. "This isn't theatre," Pendleton said stiffly as he glanced back to the two. James has made it quite clear to us. Henry looked over at the large poodle and then back into the chamber. Henry, Jake, Pendleton said sternly, show some respect and walk away. Henry hesitated, then followed after him. She's not a fan of mind control as a plot. If not explained well, it can be used. If not explained well, it can be used. However, the author. Yeah. Mind control is something that tends to rub me the wrong way. But if it's a little temporary thing like that sort of Jedi mind trick, if that's maybe the extent of how far his stuff goes, fine. It's a bit of I am super evil magic. So far, that's the most he's done when it comes to mind control. So I assume it's as far as a Jedi mind trick. The guard closed the chamber door. Jake started to move away and then stopped. He lay down against the door, surprising himself with his decision to defy Pendleton. The guard looked down, frowning at the little dog. A moment later, he resumed his at-attention stance. As Pendleton and Henry faded from view, Janice's recent warning rang loudly in Jake's ears. Your judgment and recent behaviour leaves something to be desired. Do better. Would Pendleton report back to her on what he was doing now? And why didn't he go back with them? Why couldn't he be completely content again like Henry? For the little poodle, after seeing the hologons and its happy scenes, it was like they had never taken that trip to town together. But Jake's instinct told him he had no choice. He needed to hear what the sorcerer might say to James. He checked again on the guard and then pressed a cocked ear up against the door. "Aw, no worries. If you're feeling sleepy, Mahedi, you should go have some sleep. Don't stay up and not have proper rest just 'cause of me. You can always catch up on the rest of the story later. The VOD is not going anywhere. Sleep is important." Belzadorn brought another chair over for James. The boy sat down, his eyes misted over as he studied the king. He took a breath, afraid to look away. Is my father going to die? Like mother? He looked up at Belzadorn. The sorcerer chuckled. We all die at some point. But it's not your father's time. Not this time. So not yet. It didn't feel like enough reassurance. James fidgeted with his collar, which was suddenly too tight. Yep, see you tomorrow. Have a nice sleep. Night-night. Belzadorn patted his head. What troubles you? He can't hear you. Speak freely. James hesitated, looking down. We're desperate for his company, and yet he just sleeps away the days like this. As you have a homework that you had a week to complete and completely forgot about, assuming it isn't the case, have a good one. I've done my homework. Although I do need to update Ruiner with some of those lines you guys gave me. But I have done the appearances, at least I've done my homework. Content to sleep? The sorcerer suggested. You're quite perceptive. He stood up and looked down at the king. Your father's extended repose perhaps signifies a lack of resolve? A lack of courage, James blurted out. Not unlike Uncle Richard, who led men in battle. Mother said he died in vain. She blamed my father instead of the Finland. James swiped at a tear as Belzadorn gently rubbed his back. Your father's lack of will didn't bode well for your mother. or for the men who died vainly in his war. The tears came quickly now, streaming down James's face. But he seeks peace. Why is he blamed for a war he didn't want? He asked, his voice quavering? I'm sure that should just be wavering. Bells of Dawn reached. Quivering is what it probably should be, actually. Quavering is wavering and quivering at the same time. We have a new word. Is that word? No, it is a thing! Huh. Bells of Dawn reached over for the hologon sitting on the table next to them. He traced his fingers along the curved glass, summoning up and out of it 2 grey gaseous spheres. He held one in each palm of his hand. They thrummed and pulsed. He turned to show them to James as he began to speak. The 2 lords from the Privy Council were seated together in a royal carriage, flanked by 6 mounted guards. The procession travelled along at a brisk pace on a wide dirt road in the woods, headed towards the town. When the 2 capable forces align against one another, Bells of Dawn explained, holding the spheres close to James, they're thought to be in balance with each other. A balance that maintains peace. But that is a view of the ignorant. The raven shadow rippled over the top of the Lord's carriage. For what actually exists just below this facade of harmony. The carriage slowed, and the coachman deftly hopped off his seat to the ground. He was given a quick hands up to the back of one of the guards' mounts. The Lord's guards, without a word, veered off and reversed direction as the carriage continued on. Is tension between 2 opposing forces. The sorcerer moved the spheres closer together. Their surfaces began to flatten as they resisted each other. James looked on, fascinated. Tension that grows. The spheres shuddered as Bells of Dawn moved them closer together. Builds. The carriage's horses stopped, sniffed the air, and the whites of their eyes visible as they stood in eerie silence. A heavy, dark grey fog suddenly rolled in all around them. They reared up and squealed as frigid, misty fingers drifted through their legs and up over their backs. They ran, now at a wild, frenzied pace, pulling against one another in different directions, and if not relieved freely. The carriage tilted and careened down the rutted road, the lords inside screaming in terror. The back end suddenly fishtailed, and a wheel struck a large rock. The carriage went airborne, turning over and over down the side of a steep hill. It slammed directly into a large ash, scattering and splintering, one wheel rolling off into the woods, another spinning in place and finally coming to a stop. Leads to a ruinous discharge of stress. The spheres touched, sparks flew in all directions, and there was a smell of ozone in the room. That release is brutal, unyielding destruction, misery and death. The sorcerer moved the spheres away from each other. Your father couldn't grasp this, he concluded. James furrowed his brow. But he said he had to defend Gorsland. That it was just war. Bells of Dawn pursed his lips as he brought one sphere to the other. One of the spheres swelled up and consumed the other. This remaining sphere was larger and completely still in the sorcerer's palm. James was transfixed. What was just in the needless death of so many? Belzadorn asked as he began to pace back and forth in front of James. His lack of courage in accepting precedent Vanish rule led to the tragic loss of life and a torturous balance between the two kingdoms that persisted to this day. With a flick of his hand, the sorcerer waved the sphere away and pulled out a thick roll of weathered scrolls from a pocket deep inside his robe. He stopped in front of the boy, and his features softened. But the outcome can be changed. No more hostility, no more war between nations, he said as he unrolled the scrolls across the table. James stood up and walked over. His eyes were wide as he ran fingers over the unintelligible runes. These scrolls are the essence of the art of magic, Belzadorn continued, discovered by the gifted ascetics of Vinland centuries ago. James looked up confused. I thought the stories say that a great shaman travelled from afar to these lands to share the gift of magic with stories of old only meant to entertain children, said Belzadorn, leaning back and laughing. The cook, what's her name? Lesady would tell you such a story, and she'd throw in dead relatives and a few chattering animals for good measure. James looked down, his cheeks blushing. The sorcerer patted his back and then spread out several pages of the scrolls. The boy pored over them in wonderment. These ascetics accepted the moral burden of leading others, Belzadorn began again, regardless of culture, creed, or country. He resumed his pacing, a hand stroking his beard. But Gorsland feared this natural order. They demanded that this gift be shared. His pacing grew intently, his voice impassioned. When the Vinish refused, these cretins stole what was not theirs, and brought forth a bloodbath between the two realms. A stalemate that only eliminated almost all traces of magic. Only these scrolls have survived. He let out a long, deep breath and stood again in front of the table. James carefully lifted up a page and examined it in a way. This is all that remains of... It was my destiny to find these scrolls. The sorcerer paused, looking intently at James. As it is our destiny to safeguard them, to keep magic alive, and only in the hands of those fit to wield it. And wield it we must, in order to end tension through a just realignment of power, to bring forth a universal peace. James looked up at him, speechless. Finally the words came. Our destiny? Belzadorn smiled. Does that surprise you? You're of your father, but not like him. You have the strength of will that mirrors the greatest leaders of the past. James looked away from Belzadorn's unwavering stare. But Janice says I'm an infant, and I pretend to talk to animals, and... The sorcerer laughed. He lifted James's chin up and looked down at him, his eyes twinkling. But you recognize your childish ways. He ruffled the boy's hair. Accept the sobering task of leading the desperate. Let go of fools. Like shamans and their witless superstitions, the sculptor of theirs, he favors you, not them. James's body trembled. Maybe Father can help me with this. Belzadorn, beaming, placed his hand on James's shoulder again. It is your birthright, not his. This power lies only with you, but you can do this for him as a gift of love. James looked up at him with solemn eyes. Belzadorn gestured to the scrolls. Come, let me show you. Well, that all sounds terrible. He's just a baby. He's just a baby, Belzadorn. Stop filling his head with nonsense. Jake was stunned as he took in all that he heard. He looked up at the guards, certain too that he would be shocked by the conversation, but he stood silent and impassive as before. Had he not heard a word? Jake hopped up. I have to act now, he thought. Must warn James. He stood on his hind legs and leaned his front paws against the door, trying to push it open. Now the guard came to life. We'll have none of that. You leave him. You leave him be. Off with you now. He reached down to pick up the dog. Jake wriggled through his hands and scurried away. But as Jake scampered down the gloomy hallway, he all at once realized he had no idea where to go, or who to see. Janice? He sighed, imagining how badly that exchange of words would go. Pendleton? Well, obviously not. Henry? A good friend with absolutely no power or influence. Leslie? He shivered. She was terrifying and a complete mystery to him. Chris? Jake had no desire to be near him again. And besides, what would he possibly do? It would have to be James. But maybe Jake could try to get him alone later, he thought. But the words the boy had just spoken to Belzadorn echoed in his mind now. I pretend to talk to animals. It got worse, though. The hardened convictions Jake had just moments ago were already melting away. Maybe he was overreacting. No, you're not, Jake! Trust in your instincts, they are good! Your judgment. Do better. There were those words again, rattling around in his head. Besides, the town was thriving. Belzadorn had healed James, and the king did seem happy, although a bit tired, granted. And James was happy, and what could be so bad about universal peace? What did he, a simple animal, really know about war and history and destiny and shamans and who stole from whom? Jake slowed to a shuffle and choked back a sob. Confused ideas, words and jumbled thoughts swirled in his head. His fluffy feather duster of a tail sagged down behind him as he looked around. The castle suddenly felt colder and much larger, huge and empty, and no longer much like home. Aww. Jakey. Oh, Baba. The Raven offers counsel. The fickle weather of spring gave way to reliably warm and clear days in June. Whenever the bleakness of the castle and the despair that came with it started to creep into his bones, Jake would fend it off with a dose of delightful sunshine and a romp in the meadows with Henry through cheerful daisies and buzzing bees. Once in a great while, Janice and James and even Pendleton would join them, but when they did, it wasn't like before. Janice was moody and peevish. Jake had to walk on eggshells now when he was with her, and she was easily distracted. One moment she would be enjoying a carefree stroll through the woods with them, and the next she'd be smoothing out her dress, frowning at grass stains, and then quickly returning to the castle. And on the rare occasion that James would join them, he would always have Pendleton with him. The two of them would be standoffish, usually with James hacking at flowers with his wooden sword, and Pendleton ignoring the decapitation of daisies, instead scolding Jake and Henry for their most undignified behaviour. Though it was rather unclear as to which particular behaviour was being called into question. The truth of it was that the children were becoming less like children these days. After all, they had more important things to attend to, tasks that required most of their attention. Janice would spend hours each day practicing the lute and the harp. It seemed she had a gift for music. At least that's what her tutor would tell her, as he demanded that she work through another set of vigorous melodic exercises. Jake would rest on the floor, waiting patiently for her attention. When the tutor was finally satisfied, Jake would pop up and trot over after her, trying to have a few words with her, just to talk, the same as they did when they had been best friends. As she walked briskly from the music lesson in one large room over to her lady-in-waiting in another room for her dance lesson. The dance was called Galliard, or something like that. Jake knew he was a natural at it. He wasn't sure about Janice's ability. It made perfectly good sense to him that he should be Janice's partner, when he would give 3 quick hops and then launch gracefully into a Candice. But it was not to be. She would give him a brief smile, and then if he didn't move quickly out of the way, she would grow exacerbated and shoo him off. Dinner wasn't the same now either. Janice saved her words for the servants, her commands delivered to them crisply as her vision and creativity blossomed in the planning of splendid banquets. These complex affairs were carried out with all the proper protocols and regalia, and with only the most sumptuous of dishes. Truth be told, she was still quite shy and fearful of the master chef, Leslie, who really had just as much to do with the splendour and success of these impressive culinary events as Janice. In the evening, the ritual was the same. Jake would largely be ignored, as Janice would carry a little sup to her father in his chamber. Sometimes he would be awake and would take in a little nourishment. At those times Janice's eyes would sparkle, and she would play her lute for him. But he would soon fall asleep, remaining mostly unaware of all the practice and hard work she had put in to please him. Jake would try to offer her comfort, but he would not reach her. With a sullen pout, she would storm out of her father's chambers and rush past James and Belzadorn, who were usually sitting together with the king in the king's withdrawing room. In that room of past happiness, the sorcerer would spread the scrolls out over a large wooden table, and then he and James would study them together. The boy would stumble over pronunciations and symbols and would ask endless questions about what certain spells did and how to invoke it properly. Belzadorn was happy to provide answers whenever needed. He would never lose patience unless someone else, uninvited, happened to interrupt their sessions. When James wasn't busily absorbed in the finer points of ancient magical art, he would work in the courtyard on his swordplay with Sir Baldwin, the legendary leader of both the King's Guard and his army. Only the late Sir Richard was held in higher regard, and James fancied himself as his uncle as he slashed his wooden sword at the heads of straw-stuffed dummies. Even Jake was fair game for James's thrusts, a fun moving target if the dog happened to get a little bit too close to the action. And Belzadorn was there too, always, smiling and watching. One evening, James was again sitting with Belzadorn in the king's withdrawing room. The sorcerer had set aside the scrolls and had brought forth the hologons. This strange instrument had proven to be particularly challenging to James. The sorcerer gently reminded the boy that he had to have a connection with the device, physical and spiritual. If he could properly channel his emotions into it, if he could then draw out of it what he wanted or even needed to see. James ran his fingers along the glass and nothing happened. He closed his eyes and tried again. Still no change, except for his heavy sigh that had steamed up the glass's surface. The boy's frustration and anger grew. He rubbed furiously now as he narrowed his eyes, and then he gave a small, uncertain smile up at Belzedorn as he drew out from the hologon small sparks and a few grey clouds. The smile became a triumphant cry when a long, thin bolt of lightning suddenly streaked up out of the glass and singed one of Belzedorn's eyebrows. The sorcerer backed away, startled, and then grinned down at him, giving him a slap on the back. The images will come in time. You have... Sorry, that was not Belzedorn's voice. Getting fidgeting. I need to fidget. I'm such a fidget. Fidget. The images will come in time. You have well done. You have done well. Well done. There's a mistake there. After James had left the withdrawing room, Belzedorn rolled up the scrolls and turned his attention again to the hologons. He hesitated, then traced his fingers over the glass. A thick, dark fog rolled up from the center and then dissipated, revealing images of a younger version of himself, frolicking with a boy close to James's age. In that time, long ago, his wife came up to them, smiling and stroking a purring black cat. She set the cat down, and they all playfully gave chase to one another. The sorcerer frowned as the clouds unexpectedly rolled up through the hologons and blanketed over the happy memories. He rubbed the glass and bit hard on his lip as new images formed. In this scene he was older, and he held his son's lifeless body in his arms. His wife stood before him, staring at him with bitter tears of contempt. Her bottom lip quivered, and then she turned her back on him, walking away and fading from sight. The cat looked back at Belzedorn, and then followed after her. As the sorcerer wiped his eyes, the raven glided in and landed on the table. Belzedorn flicked away the images and pushed the hologons aside. The large bird stared at him, his eyes black and cold, devoid of emotion. "It's good to keep the injustice fresh in your mind and heart," he said, his clicks and sharp raps like sharp raps on a rock. Belzedorn cleared his throat. "My friend, I'm afraid I'm not up to the task of providing satisfying conversation this evening." The bird tilted his head, his beady eyes casting a penetrating stare. "Good. You need only listen." The sorcerer grew nervous. The raven's clicks pierced. He that whispers reminds us that the boy was just a tool to be used to take the king. In that regard, you've already succeeded. Do not get too close to him. He can't be trusted to know our magic. Belzedorn frowned, quickly caught himself, and lowered his head. "With all due respect to the wisest one, and to you," his voice cracked, "James has the affection of the people of Gorsland, even as they look to us to deliver them from fear and apprehension. If he's in my hand willingly, then they're forever mine, without the slightest exertion. He waited, and then looked up. They are forever Vinland's. The raven rebuked him with a raspy croak. Yes, of course. Vinland's, Belzadorn replied, quickly looking down again. Your power of persuasion is unproven, the bird said. It puts our objective at risk. Better to rely on the art that has served us well, to take those people as ours, as we have the need. But you know this ancient art is far from perfected, the sorcerer protested, his voice rising as he lifted up his eyes. Such was seen with the Privy Council, and the raven spread his wings and glowered at Belzadorn. It's not the art that is not perfected, but your mastery of it. I didn't mean to offend, the sorcerer faltered. But when it fails, when I fail, the one which it fails becomes a more likely threat. The one on which it failed become a more likely threat. He could feel the bird move even closer to him. He continued on quickly. My most capable teacher, you know that it taxes us to maintain unnatural control over others, that it leaves us weakened. Isn't it prudent to seize kingdoms with the illuminating argument, accepted of their own free will? When he finished, he gave a small, uncomfortable cough and then looked down at the floor. The bird brought his heavy blade of a beak close to Pendleton's ears. And yet, remember your position as his servant. You miscalculate. It will not go well for you. And with that, the raven took wing and flew out of the room. Da da da! Oh no. We knew the bird. I kind of got the feeling that the bird was the one to be afraid of, definitely. But it seems they're both working for people in Vinland! Vinland Saga! I think I've got enough time for maybe one more chapter, and then I will have to call it Adi. News from Greyland. Jake looked out of the children's chamber window. It was the third time he'd done so in the past hour. Heavy, dark storm clouds were barely suspended in the sky as rain swept through in billowing grey sheets across the courtyard. The river was a rolling snake, twisting and writhing as it swelled up against its banks. The town nestled down in the valley beyond the broad meadows and thick woods was just a blurry brown speck. The gloomy weather had cancelled Jake's plans with Henry for the two of them to visit Digby and maybe even do some tunneling with him. Truth be told, Digby did most of the tunneling, and very efficiently too. But even so, it was great sport, as they never knew where they were going to pop up, and that made the digging even more exciting. Except for that one time they ended up directly beneath Atlas, and were almost accidentally trampled to smush. Henry, though, didn't mind the dreary day and staying indoors. Always flexible and cheerful, the little poodle was now contentedly snoozing away on the large bed, positioned as close to Pendleton as he could be without incurring the posh-ass poodle's wrath. The stuck-up poodle's wrath. They need to get a, like, pronunciation thing in that dictionary. That would make my life easier. But Jake was feeling glum and restless. It wasn't just the foul weather that had impacted his mood. For the past several days, he had simply been trying to get back to whatever normal used to be. If everyone else around him moved along as if there was nothing in particular to see or think, then he should just as well try to do the same, he reasoned. And that had been working quite nicely. Until two things happened. The first step away from normal was the matter of the missing lords. 2 of them, to be exact. Of course, Jake had no prior knowledge of this disturbing news. At least he didn't until a few days ago, when he had carefully made his way towards the castle kitchen in search of a snack. He remained ever fearful of Leslie, and dared not come by if he thought she was in there, busily directing the complex preparations of a large meal. But sometimes, if he timed it right, a servant would pop her head out of the kitchen and slip him a bone to gnaw on, just to tide him over until dinner. As he approached the kitchen, he overheard servants whispering to one another. "They're just gone! Poof! Vanished into thin air! At least that's what I heard," one said. "Which are you speaking of?" asked the second. "Why, you know, the handsome one, and the rather striking, actually, Lord Courtney," replied the first, "and, well, the plain one, Lord Hastings." "How can they just disappear?" protested the second. "Well, I'm only telling you what the others are telling me," insisted the first. "Even their carriage can't be found. And if you want to know..." "When will dinner be ready?" interrupted Leslie. She had her hands braced on her hips and gave them sharp, flashing eyes. The two scurried back to a massive oak table and started furiously chopping onions. A small smile crept onto Leslie's face as she turned her attention back to a row of ginger brie tarts cooling on the shelf. Jake racked his brain. He remembered the lords. 4 of them had barged into the king's chamber the other day, and now 2 were missing? He wanted to hear more. He slunk into the kitchen and edged along the wall, trying to get a little closer to the servants, but he froze in terror. Leslie had swiftly picked up a cleaver and was glaring at the corner of the kitchen near the scullery. In that corner was Digby, and he too was frozen, with the tart stuffed halfway into his mouth. My little thief's back," she said firmly. "I'd expect a cleaver urchin to be sleeping these time of days and use the cover of night for his mischief." She raised the cleaver overhead. Digby snapped out of his shock and backpedaled towards the scullery drainage pipe. "Ask, don't take! Might go better for you that way." She strode after the hedgehog. "Leaving so soon? Don't want to be served up as a side dish," she cackled. "Or perhaps your bones and entrails would better serve me. I should take you to me home with me." Digby disappeared. She turned back around with a broad smile and walked back to her tarts. Leslie paired with a cleaver had been enough for Jake to make a quick exit from the kitchen. He had heard no more about the missing lords that day. And I really need a drink. 1 second. Yeah, definitely last chapter. My throat's starting to feel this. The second step away from normal was Jake's recent inability to hold a meaningful conversation with James. Jake still wasn't so sure James and Belzadorn getting along Still wasn't sure about James and Belzadorn getting along famously, but he had mostly succeeded in... I completely lost my place. I looked away for 2 seconds. And mostly succeeding in shoving those little nagging doubts into the back of his mind. Until, that is, he decided to ask James about the missing lords. Jake had caught up with the prince as he strode briskly towards the courtyard for another session of swordplay. "James, do you have a moment?" he asked as the boy looked about for Sir Baldwin. "Did you say something? Do make it quick, I'm in a hurry," he replied curtly, peeved by the dog's unexpected appearance. "Sorry, out of breath," Jake said. "I just wanted to ask if you caught wind of the news about Lord Courtney and Lord Hastings." Jake had circled around in front of him, trying to catch his attention. James nearly tripped over him. "Hang it all, Jake, what are you doing?" he said, frowning down at the little dog. "Well, it's just that there's been a rumour going round." "Are you growling at me?" "Oh no, he's lost his ability to hear the animals." "Are you growling at me?" James asked with an annoyed look on his face. "What? No, of course not. Never," Jake faltered. "No worries. This is a very listened stream anyway. I'm happy for people to just lurk. Lurking is fine. Have a nice lurk." James gave him a blank stare, and then a scowl. "You are growling." He spotted Sir Baldwin and started walking in his direction. He looked back at Jake. "You sound like one of those stray curs lurking in the shadows, hoping to sneak into the castle for scraps. Oh my god." That's what it feels like. It's not good. He shook his head in disgust. "Come back to me when you're in a better mood." He stalked off, leaving Jake shocked. There had been no further words or growls with James since then. Jake turned away from the rain-streaked window and checked again on Henry. He was on his back now, snoring, his front paws dangling above him. Jake shook his head and then padded over to the door. He really wanted to talk with Janice now, but knew she'd be busy with dance and for the rest of the afternoon. He sighed. He dreaded the idea, but he'd try again to seek out James. He'd headed off down the hallway. As James passed through the throne room, he drew close to the king's withdrawing room. He took caution and sidled up to the entrance, certain that he would see Belzadorn within, once again monitoring James. He peeked in. No sorcerer. That was a relief, but no James either. So, where was he? Not outside in the pouring rain. As he turned to go, he heard muttering. He looked back in and noticed the king was reclining in a plush chassis lounge along the far side of the room and close to his chamber door. Jake squinted. Was he talking in his sleep? Curiosity got the better of him. He'd have to get closer to find out. As he moved softly through the room, he heard footsteps headed his way. He made a dash for the chassis, saw the king was slumbering and ducked underneath. Belzadorn walked into the room. "My love," the king mumbled, "do not be angry with me." The sorcerer looked down at the king. "I'm not," he said, chuckling, and then went over to the hologans on the table. He drew a long, slender finger along its glass and watched as splinters of colour and light rose up, swirled, and were drawn in against one another to form an image. He carried the hologans over to the king and touched his cheek. The king opened groggy eyes. "Your Majesty, news of the day," announced the sorcerer. The king struggled to sit up. "Will it lift my spirits?" he asked, smiling hopefully. Belzadorn frowned. I wish I could bring glad tidings. He brought the hologons close to the king. The king squinted fearfully at the images of a man with long grey hair, with his arms crossed, who was lying in a state by torchlight. A figure in a gold-embroidered red cloak knelt before him. Greyland's king is dead, said the sorcerer gravely. A death that has shocked his people. Jake yanked his head up with a start, just barely stopping from smacking his head against the bottom of the chassis. He cocked both his ears. The king's eyes were wide in alarm. But how can this be? He was in good health. He stopped to draw in wheezy breaths. He was like a brother to me. I must find the strength to travel, to pay my respects. He tried to lean forward, but the sorcerer gently pushed him back against the pillows. You must hear the rest, Belzadorn said. Visiting Greyland is fraught with peril. King Charles was murdered. The king's mouth was agape, but he was loved by all. Who would... The sorcerer pointed down at the hologons. The kneeling figure rose and turned away from the body. He was a young man, his face, hard features, his flint grey eyes cold and stony, as he whispered to courtiers. Poisoned by his very own son, this man you see before you, Belzadorn continued. He says that his father was murdered by two noblemen from Gorsland. They'd sought to end Greyland's persistent claim on the mines of Bentmore. This son moves now to take advantage of this deception. The deception's in the news itself, said Lesady. Jake stifled a gasp. The king and Belzadorn looked up from the hologons, surprised to see Lesady standing before them with a silver tray in hand. It had on it 2 gold goblets and an assortment of tarts and fruit. It's good to see you, your majesty, she said, setting the tray down on the table. I have brought refreshments to help you regain your vigor, and maybe your wits. A sinister smile crept across the sorcerer's face. Ah, the cook. Lesady, isn't it? And how is it we find you here interrupting private council? Lesady's expression was stone cold and unflinching. You're not the only one with powers of persuasion. Jake belly crawled closer to the underside of the edge of the chassis. Ever so carefully, he peered out into the room. The king lifted a trembling hand. Perhaps we should hear what Lesady has to say. She can be trusted to make me yawn with this breathless voice I'm doing. React with confusion, Belzadorn cut in. Understandable, given this tragic event. Lesady moved closer to the king. Your Majesty, I have kin living in Greyland who can vouch for the character of their king and his son. Why would... But the sorcerer was suddenly at Lesady's side. Wearing a thin smile, he snatched up and squeezed her hand, whispering quick, hissing words. Her face went pale. Her body wobbled on shaking legs. The sorcerer looked at her warmly. Now, as she shuddered, unable to remove her hand from his. Are you in need of assistance? He asked her with faint concern, as her knees gave way and she sank to the ground. You don't seem to be yourself. The room is spinning, Lesady gasped. What have you Belzadorn called for the guards as he helped her stand back up. She swayed on her feet as 2 of them came running into the room. "Help this good woman back to her cottage," the sorcerer instructed them. "She's fallen ill. Arrange for her needs as long as she's required." Leslie staggered out of the room, supported by the guards as they half carried, half dragged her away. Jake felt sick. Terrifying reality swept in and smothered him. There would be no more doubts, no more pretending, no more normal. Though Leslie might still be a mystery to him, Belzadorn was not. Not now. The little dog shivered, and his breath quickened. A wave of nausea washed over him as he was pinned down by the chassis above him and the sorcerer's feet just in front of him. Belzadorn watched Leslie go. One sad event after another. Perhaps there's some truth in her words. What that? The king started with a rasp. The sorcerer turned to him and grasped his hand. The king fell back against the chassis, his eyes now slits, his mouth slack. Truth? Of what truth do you speak? Replied Belzadorn, answering as a parent would, disappointed with a child. That I'd concocted a tale to bring you stress and pain? You know I care for you and your son. Saliva trickled out of the corner of the king's mouth. I meant no injury, only that perhaps Greyland isn't lost yet. The sorcerer helped the king to sit up, and again held the hologons close to him. The king struggled to focus on the new images, a patchwork of scenes of soldiers and war horses. Even now, this devil of a son is looking to catch Gorsland off guard, Belzadorn explained. He gathers supplies and arms, ready his forces for battle. But the people of Greyland, they'll remember the goodwill we had. Belzadorn waved his hand, frowning. Alliances dissolve in a day. The king sagged back against his pillows, his eyes closing. I had to fight an inexplicable war with Vinland, he said, his voice hardly more than a weary whisper. I don't want this with Greyland. We must avert. Then send envoys to establish terms of peace, the sorcerer said sternly. But do it quickly, for it will soon be too late for Gorsland. Yes, of course, mumbled the king as he gave in to sleep. As you wish, my king, scoffed Belzadorn, as he turned and walked out the room. So Belzy's pretty much got everything he wanted, but I knew Leslie wouldn't be a bad guy. She's like a bit of a scary witch, but she's not a bad guy. At least she's not on Belzy's side, and she's worked in the castle for a long time, so the way I reckon it is if she was a bad guy by now, she would have done something already. But she hasn't, as far as we know. And Jake has his resolve now. He's not questioning himself. I don't blame him for going into a bit of denial. You gotta do that hero's journey thing of just ignoring the call for a little bit, wanting everything to be normal, but nothing's normal anymore. The house has moved on. But now Jake knows. Jake knows that Belzy's a bad guy and will not doubt himself now. However, he's got no friends to help him. No one is going to believe him. So what can he do? We'll find out next week. In next week's episode of Leap Into Darkness. Because that is it for today. Thank you, Clint. Thank you, Mahedi. Thank you, Luke. Thank you. Anyone else been in the chat? Rippy Dippy, I know you did the start. Zero's pretty short too. For being in the chat. Thank you to anyone who lurked. Thank you to anyone who watches the VOD. I really appreciate you all being here. As you know, I did reach 300 subs recently. Yay! So Monday I will be having my celebration stream for that. I promised when I hit that deadline that I would play something very spooky. So on Monday I will be playing Jump Scare Mansion, which is gonna just absolutely ruin me. It's gonna be awful. I am not looking forward to it. I'll have the schedule up for that. I'll be streaming 4 times again this next week. So Monday, Jump Scare Mansion. Tuesday, Library of Ruiner. Thursday, break. Wednesday, Thursday, break. Friday, Minecraft. And Sunday, more reading. If you have not already, please put a like on the video and think about subscribing. It would make me happy. But... oh, and buy my book. Links in the description, because I wrote books. I'd buy them, please. Yay! And other than that, I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brandy Rose Smith live in the Forbidden Library. Goodbye. Where's my